Hi, Matt, and thank you for joining me on the first of the Icon Payments podcasts. So, last year we had a great series of tech blogs on IPF and the design decisions that we've made during IPF. And we thought we'd start this year by fleshing those out with a series of video podcasts where we look at some of the key concepts. So, thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, great to be here, Rich.
Cool. So I thought it'd be good to start with some of the trends that we're seeing in the market, just to give some context to the decisions that we've made around IPF. So why don't you kick us off with a couple of trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, so there's been a number of trends that we've seen throughout our engagement with some of our banking clients. But two to begin with, and two of the most notable ones that we've been seeing is volume, not value, and embedded finance.
And on that first one, I hear us often talk about a tsunami of low value payments coming with our clients.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So the volume of transactions is set to increase, but the average value of each of those is set to decrease. So banks have got to reduce the cost to run their payments effectively. So at the moment, a lot of banks are focusing on the cost of change, but what we see is going to happen is that's going to shift from the cost of change to the cost of running the bank. That's where the focus is going to shift to.
Cool, fantastic. And what was the second one?
So the second one is embedded finance. So what we've seen is the migration to real time. So this has been happening in the UK and across Europe for a while now. So we've obviously had the faster payment scheme in the UK and SEPA Inst in Europe. But we're seeing, an increasing number of real-time schemes across the globe. So, there's a new one announced in the Middle East recently. There's a SIC5 instant scheme in Switzerland. So, increasingly we're seeing countries move to real-time payments, and partly that's fueled by embedded finance. So, embedded finance is where the initiation of payment is instigated from the customer journey within a non-finance app. So where traditionally you'd be initiating a payment from your mobile banking app, that's set to decrease in favor of that being initiated from a customer journey within a non-banking app. So for example, your gym or something like that.
I was using it last night when I was booking my yoga session on MindBody. So there's a couple that I'd start with, and actually both of them we've done primary research on over the past 12 months. So payments data monetization, we did a report last year with Salent and MongoDB, and it's a topic that we've talked about for a long time. We've talked about ISO 20022 for, it seems like, forever, but now finally the pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together, and people are talking about how do we actually exploit that to get payments, and what was interesting, or to get revenues. And what was interesting in the reports was these are the kinds of services that corporates are willing to pay for, and these are the kinds of services that corporates expect to part as come with the package. The other one which we've researched recently was request to pay. So again, something which has been talking about for a while, but the momentum is starting to build, and we're seeing it come into many of the newest schemes, as well as different initiatives coming to the fore. And that's quite interesting because that's in more of the payments initiation space. So as we talk about the tsunami of low value payments, we've got to keep the payments execution piece as low cost and as standardized as possible. But in the initiation space, that's where we can start to create some value, create revenue, have chargeable services.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, and ties us in quite nicely to what we're going to touch on in a minute, which is IPF. So IPF on our product side, we've actually built an initial solution for request to pay. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in terms of request to pay over the next year or so.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we come on to IPF, possibly a good place to start, Matt, is with some history behind it. So do you want to give us a quick background on IPF?
Yeah, absolutely. So, some people will know that Icon started as a consultancy company in 2009, and we conducted, consultancy engagements, strategy, payments transformation for banking clients across the globe, particularly in the payment space. And what we were recognizing was that the solutions available to banks were not, they weren't fit for purpose. They weren't addressing the challenges that banks are facing. So, and as a result of doing all these engagements, we were acquiring a significant amount of payments expertise. And what we did 5 years ago was we launched our own product, IPF, the Icon Payments Framework. And in the last 5 years, we've been continually evolving it to the point where now it really is what we believe good looks like. And there are a few really key points that we're going to touch on now. But one of the things that I'll start with is what a lot of banking clients at the moment are faced with is the choice between choosing a legacy vendor or choosing an in-house build. And what we try to do is marry up the best of both worlds and offer minimal vendor dependency. So we really encourage and even go further than that to make sure that clients are not dependent on us. They are able to own the solution and own change, and that's resonating very strongly with clients at the moment.
Cool, fantastic. So when we think about payments projects, there's a number of challenges that typically we hit, and one of the first ones would be, how do you define and create the payment flows, and also I guess how do you keep the documentation about the payment flows up to date once you're actually in production? So how does IPF help with that?
Yeah, so orchestration and the modeling of flows is one of the areas where IPF differentiates most strongly against its competitors. So one of the things we've done is we've built our own unique domain-specific language, which we've done leveraging the third-party open source technology JetBrains NPS. So this is a low-code language which a business user, so for example a business analyst, and a technical user, for example a developer, will collaborate on to define the flows in a low-code language, all the while with a graphical process flow visualization updating in real time to give a clear view of what is being defined. And then the code itself is generated automatically. So it's a complete paradigm shift with what a lot of the legacy vendors are doing at the moment. And once you generate that, generate the code, it also generates the documentation, BDD test scenarios, and so on and so forth. So it's incredibly powerful.
And as you look at IPF, it kind of fits in, any payment solution fits in as part of an overall landscape. So integration is quite key. How does it help with the integration challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. So integration, we often used to think of integration as being as much as 80% of an implementation. And as part of an implementation with a tier one banking client, you're looking at maybe 15 or more integrations with, for example, accounting, fraud, sanctions, and so on and so forth. So what we've done is we've built what is the IPF connector framework. So whereas a lot of our competitors, legacy vendors, take a bespoke approach to each integration, what we do is we take a standardized, homogenized approach. So we will mold all integrations to our framework, which means we can have consistent integrations and means that we can accelerate them. And just in terms of some of the key principles for the connector framework, it's them to be modular, to have modular components that you can plug in, for them to be reactive, so reactive streams, signaling demand upstream, fluent and easy to use, of course, in the whole mantra of empowering our clients and minimalizing vendor dependency.
Fantastic. And the final point, probably just to cover now, is non-functionals. It's always a big challenge.
Yeah. So in this day and age, it's banks, tier one banks, cannot afford to go down to not be able to process payments. So high availability, resilience, scalability, low latency are all absolutely fundamental. And in order to combat these, what we've done within IPF is we haven't reinvented the wheel. We've sought out the best technologies, the best patterns, the best principles to deliver a solution that meets the highest non-functional requirements. So, for example, from the technology, we use akka to give us a highly concurrent, resilient, microservices-oriented architecture. We use alpaca for the integration layer. We use typically MongoDB on the database side, which is a horizontally scalable DB. In terms of patterns and principles, we use CQRS. So that's where we break up the read side and the write side. We use back pressure. It's an event-driven finite state machine. And then also just a couple of other points to note. It's fully cloud native and cloud agnostic. We can do, for example, rolling upgrades to make sure there's no outage when we want to do an upgrade. And just to finish off, we provide elastic scalability. So like we said at the beginning about, when we talked about volume, not value, and the importance of reducing the run cost, having elastic scalability to scale up to manage peaks, but also to scale back down to make sure you don't have, so that you don't have too much infrastructure that when you don't need it, is absolutely fundamental.
Fantastic. And as we were saying again at the beginning, that we're kind of building on top of the blog post from last year. So fantastic reads like why CQRS and event sourcing are ideal for instant payments. And we're then going to kind of explore those in more detail over some of these podcasts over the next few months. So thank you for joining me today, Matt, for this introductory session. And we look forward to having some further discussions over the next few months.